The Cursed Canvas. In the quiet town of Ashwood, there was a small art gallery owned by an elderly man named Mr. Rupert. Among the collection, a peculiar painting had always stood out. A dark, brooding portrait of a young woman with hollow eyes, painted in somber tones. It was titled The Silent Gaze. Mr. Rupert claimed it had been found in the ruins of an old mansion that burned down nearly a century ago. The painting drew the attention of Emily, a local art student with a passion for the macabre. Intrigued by its mysterious aura, she convinced Mr. Rupert to let her borrow it for an art project, despite his warnings. "It's cursed," he told her, with a haunted look in his eyes. "Those who stare too long see things that they cannot unsee." Emily brushed it off as an old man's superstition and took the painting home. She hung it in her bedroom, where it immediately filled the room with a chilling atmosphere. That night, unable to sleep, she felt compelled to look at it. The woman in the painting seemed almost alive, her expression more sinister than Emily had remembered. Days passed, and Emily began noticing strange occurrences around her apartment. At first it was small things, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, flickering lights, and a shadowy presence she could feel lurking in the corners of her vision. She tried to ignore it, chalking it up to stress from her coursework. One evening, as she sketched alone in her room, she noticed the painting seemed to have changed subtly. The woman's eyes, once vacant, now gleamed with a strange intensity. Emily shook her head, telling herself it was just her imagination. But as she continued her work, she couldn't shake the feeling that the woman's gaze was locked onto her every move. Later that night, she heard faint scratching sounds coming from the wall where the painting hung. She tried to dismiss it, but the noise grew louder, relentless, like nails clawing through wood. Emily approached the painting cautiously, her hand trembling as she touched its cold, rough surface. The scratching ceased, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Suddenly she felt something sharp brush against her finger. She pulled her hand back, startled to find a thin, fresh cut on her fingertip, blood trickling down her hand. There was no logical explanation. Her finger hadn't touched anything sharp. Confused and disturbed, Emily washed her hand and returned to bed, keeping a wary eye on the painting. As she lay there, sleep eluded her. A strange, oppressive feeling settled over the room, and Emily found herself fixated on the painting once more. The woman's hollow eyes now seemed to glow faintly, a sinister red. And then, to Emily's horror, she saw the woman's lips moving, forming silent words she couldn't decipher. The next day, Emily confided in her friend, Sarah, about the strange events. "It's probably just stress," Sarah assured her, though her expression revealed a hint of concern. "Or maybe you've been staring at it too long. Just take it back to the gallery." But Emily shook her head. She felt an inexplicable attachment to the painting, as if it had cast a spell over her. That evening, Emily tried to distract herself by working on her art project. Hours passed, but the woman's haunting face loomed in her mind. She finally gave in to the urge and glanced at the painting, only to find that the woman's gaze seemed to be pleading, as if begging her for something. But what? Driven by a sudden compulsion, Emily whispered, "What do you want from me?" As soon as the words left her lips, the temperature in the room plummeted, and her breath became visible in the icy air. She watched in horror as her reflection in the glass of the painting distorted, twisting into a reflection of the woman in the painting. Emily tried to look away, but she felt frozen in place, her eyes locked onto the woman's, and then she heard it, a faint, chilling voice in her mind, whispering, "Come closer." The room grew darker, the shadows thickening until they seemed to move of their own accord. Emily's vision blurred, and she felt herself drawn forward, as if an invisible force was pulling her into the depths of the painting. The walls of her room seemed to melt away, replaced by an endless void. She felt herself sinking, the edges of her vision consumed by darkness. Just then, a cold hand gripped her shoulder, pulling her back to reality. Emily gasped, looking around to see she was still in her room, the painting hanging on the wall. But something had changed. The woman's expression was no longer pleading. It was triumphant, determined to uncover the truth. Emily searched for information about the painting's history. Late into the night, she discovered that the original owner of the burned mansion was a young woman named Lillian, who was rumored to have dabbled in dark rituals. Locals believed she had made a pact with a sinister entity before her mysterious death, and it was said that her spirit remained trapped in the painting that hung in her family home. Emily's heart raced as she read about the people who had previously owned the painting, all of whom had disappeared under strange circumstances. Realizing the danger she was in, she decided to return the painting to Mr. Rupert the following morning. That night, however, the shadows grew thicker, and she awoke to find the woman standing beside her bed, a spectral figure with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. Emily tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure reached out, her cold fingers brushing Emily's cheek as she whispered, "You're mine now." Emily felt herself fading, her vision blurring as a strange numbness took over her body. She was being pulled into the painting, her soul slipping away into its cursed depths. The next morning, when Emily's friends came to check on her after she missed their meeting, they found her room empty. The painting, however, now looked different. The woman's expression had changed. She looked like she was smirking, and at the edge of the frame, another figure had appeared, a young woman with familiar features and terror in her eyes. Legend has it that the painting still hangs in Mr. Rupert's gallery, and every now and then people say they see Emily's face among the shadows, her eyes pleading for escape.